that was tough, man. I'm gonna admit it, that was tough, and I could not thank Misha Green and the creators of the show enough for that.
This is the story of a boy and his dream, but more than that, it is the story of an American boy in a dream that is truly American.
So last night was episode 10, season finale, possibly series finale, because we don't know if it's coming back for a season 2 yet or not, of Lovecraft Country, and it was great. It continued the show's high standard of excellence, but it was also in many ways very shocking and challenging for me. Some of my assumptions, not only about the show, but maybe some about myself, were brought into light, and I was legit shook, y'all. I really was. It was a lot. So probably the biggest, I mean, there was so much to unpack in this episode, but the biggest thing is, of course, is Atticus is dead. The toll that this took on him, this massive spell took on him, even though they tried to counter it, he did not survive. And I wasn't expecting that. And from the way that this story is told, I think it's final. Now, early on, like right in the second episode, we lost Uncle George. And there was a character that I loved, and I was really like, hey, this is a show with magic and monsters and everything, and he'll come back. And he didn't. He didn't come back. And I think that was hugely important, because what it tells me about the show is that death is a consequence, a final consequence in this show. Because if they had brought him back, then I would be saying, oh, season 2 comes back, Atticus will be back, it'll be fine. But because they didn't do that, and indeed, I mean, everyone, with the exception of Letty, who was shot, there's a question on that, whether she really died or she was healed and brought back to life. I mean, that seems to be pretty final. He didn't have the spell on him like Letty did that would resurrect him, the invulnerability spell, or whatever it is that's branded on him. He didn't have that. So this feels like it might be it for him. Certainly time travel and alternate dimensions are a part of the show, so we could do with that. And since Dee has been revealed to be the woman with the robotic arm that he met in the future, we could even, in season 2, focus on Dee and see him as he travels to the future. I mean, there's lots of possibilities of how to continue the story. Raising George, Letty, Montrose. There's amazing characters in this show that you could focus on instead of Atticus, but his death is a huge blow. The other major character we lost was Ruby, and it was hard to lose her as well. Now that one, that was the turning point on the show where I started getting really shook. So when they're in the car and they're driving and they all start singing Shaboom, and Ruby joined in, my skin started crawling because I started to understand what was about to happen. Because if you'll remember, in the first episode, they asked her to sing Shaboom, and she's like, no, I'm not going to sing that song. It sucks, right? So all of a sudden she's joining in and singing the song. That's when my brain started tingling, my whole body started tingling, and I was like, oh my God, she is Christina. Christina has killed Ruby, because you can only make the potion out of somebody who's dead. So I was like, oh my God, Christina killed Ruby, and she's hiding out in her body with all of our heroes. And that was the moment where this show really turned for me, because I've said previously that I wasn't sure if Christina was an ally or a villain. How could I have missed that? How could she have not been a villain? Like, now that the show is concluded, the insidiousness of Christina's character is so shocking to me, because she came across so welcoming, and like, oh, you just because they say you don't belong here doesn't mean you don't. And she's fighting her own war against the patriarchy because they wouldn't let her in their racist, sexist society, and she's gonna break in. However, the casual nature in which she tosses people away, especially tosses the black character's way, that is so villainous. I mean, she was in a relationship with Ruby where she was telling Ruby how special she was. And the moment Ruby became inconvenient, she's gone. No problem wearing her skin. Nothing. Like that is so insidious to me. That is like, and I was confused about her for a long time. I mean, when she reenacted the death of Emmett Till on herself, hired the guys to kill her like that, and she came out and she had that reaction, and it was this spooky reaction where she was kind of laughing and crying, and that came back into my head, and like maybe I misread that. Was she laughing? Was she taking enjoyment in this? Like, what exactly is going on with her? She was a character that I maybe chose to make more complicated than she actually was, and that shook me a lot, because how could I have missed how perfectly evil she was? I mean, literally, the characters of the show travel back in time to live some history of racism, to come back with the Book of Names, their ancestral power, right, that they have access to. Christina finds out, walks in, and tells all of them that she will not kill them if they give up their power, that they've had to live through horrible events to seize, to claim. That in itself was a terrifying statement, and I think very showing of who she was, who her character is. And then she kills Atticus, she kills Ruby, and then she has the f***ing gall to beg Dee to save her life at the end. You just killed her family, and now you're Dee, help me? What the hell is wrong? Like, total sociopathic behavior. And I can't believe that I missed it through the series of how incredibly sinister this character was. I mean, she was. I mean, she was the potion of draining the blood of dead people, and certainly she had a ferocity to her that but it seemed as if she was striking back at her own form of oppression. But she was an oppressor herself in going after this inclusion for herself. She was willing to toss everybody else under the bus. It was awful. It was awful and sinister, and I can't believe that I missed that. And yeah, certainly I gotta tell you, for a show that I already knew was tackling some very topical issues through a horror fantasy, and I loved it for that. That was the one that struck me personally, because it really made me question my own skewed view of the world at a time when I'm already questioning that, at a time where I so desperately want to be the ally that my friends and loved ones need me to be, to then all of a sudden face an assumption about a character that I made that was so obviously evil. That was tough, man. I'm gonna admit it, that was tough, and I could not thank Misha Green and the creators of the show enough for that. It is really a wonderfully beautiful and rare thing to be able to watch a show and be able, especially a show as fantastic and sometimes ridiculous and balls out crazy as this show, that could simply be watched purely for just escapist entertainment, and instead to be offered a mirror to be able to reflect and maybe become a little bit better as a result of it. I cannot say enough kind things about this show. I mean, it's right in my genre. I love things like this. But it offered more than that. It offered so much more than that. And oftentimes, even when I make these reviews, I gotta tell you guys, the next day I'm like, oh, I forgot to say that thing. I forgot that thing. It hits me on levels. Like, it keeps dropping in, like, a little bit more. And I am really looking forward to watching this show again, now knowing where the story is, and picking up on all the little clues that I missed before, that they obviously intended, that are wonderful. I hope this show gets another season because it deserves it. It's a wonderful show that gives opportunity for people who don't often get opportunity in this genre, that this genre sometimes ignores. And I'm hoping that it exists more for that. But I also have to say, season 1 is a complete story. It is. It can just be this, much like Watchmen before it. Watchmen was a complete story. Did I want more? Absolutely. But I'm okay that was it, and that's okay sometimes. Sometimes shows go on too long. Dexter. But other times they can be short and they can hit it right on the head, just nail it. So thank you, Lovecraft Country. Thank you, Misha Green and everybody involved in it. The gorgeous design of the show, the actors, the writers, everybody who contributed to the show. I was very impressed. I was very moved. It was constantly a surprise, and that is rare. And so, thank you so much. Thank you guys for joining me once a week to talk about Lovecraft Country. I hope that it has been entertaining, and I look forward to many more to come if we get them. So I'm Brian Graves. This has been Fans Be Like, talking about Lovecraft Country. Thank you guys so much.